Hey, Steve, thanks again for joining me on our Thought Leadership Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, our head of partnerships for DealMachine. On our Thought Leader Spotlight series pieces in general, we really try to shine a spotlight on industry experts and, these thought leaders that have inspiring stories and can educate our audience on really lessons that they've learned and how they personally see the world evolving. So today I have Steve Rozenberg on, renowned speaker, author, podcaster, mastermind coach, real estate investor. I know you've flipped and wholesaled, tons of properties within Houston. And you said you especially can really help people who have 0 to 10 units, right?
Yeah. I think that's where most people seem to, have trouble just crossing the starting line, I guess we'll say.
Yep.
So that's where I think a lot of people, they just have a hard time really figuring out how do you even get going on this whole
Ferris wheel
of real estate.
That's perfect. Cool. So perfect for our audience. I mean, today I want to get into a little bit about how you think about mindset and really kind of setting strategy before tactics and advice you have there. And then we'll talk about how that applies to evaluating and finding a business partner. And then, from there, even some operations, talking about, okay, now that you have that all foundationally in place, how do you think about operations? So to kind of start, can you maybe tell us and the audience a bit about your story and what, how you got to where you are today, and to give them a little bit more context too?
Yeah, sure. So, my journey into real estate started about 20 years ago. It was born out of a tragedy of 9/11. Being an airline pilot, which is what I still am today to this day. 9/11 obviously shook the whole world, especially the airline industry. And the safe, secure job that I thought that I had, that I was told that I had, turned out to be not so safe and not so secure, because 2 days after 9/11, I was delivered a furlough notice. And so it made me realize how vulnerable I was, that the illusion of having this safe, secure job was not safe and secure at all. And so that's kind of what got me on understanding what else could I do to control my own destiny, to not be, a victim saying, oh, this company screwed me. I wanted to make sure that, if it was up to me, I would control anything I could, at least for my family's, finances, et cetera. So that's when I started learning about real estate. It just seemed like all wealth at some point crisscrossed through real estate. So I thought, okay, well, might as well give that a shot. And so I started learning about real estate, read about a book a week on investing in real estate and building wealth. And it just seemed to really resonate with me, probably like many people watching us today. And so I just went down that path, and I just started educating myself and really getting into this whole world of, jumping in the deep end and just trying to consume everything. We had 9/11. I was on the furlough list. I ended up coming within 30 numbers of the bottom of a 6,000 pilot seniority list. And while I never got furloughed, I think not getting furloughed, as weird as this may sound, almost was worse. And the reason I say that is every time anything would happen in the world, I thought, okay, this is it. I'm getting the letter. And so you're just waiting and waiting without any real, to me, I'd rather face it head on, and I couldn't do that. And so it made me drive even further and faster to learn about real estate. And so I started learning about it. I started flipping and wholesaling properties, did very well, made enough money through that. I joined a local investment club here in Houston, and I bought an apartment complex with a couple of business partners. Did well on that, sold the apartment complex, got into single family houses. Everything that I learned went right out the window. I made every mistake you can imagine. We bought about 40 bad properties, and we basically got our heads handed to us by owning the wrong properties with no strategies, no tactics, no goals. And then I learned why some people lose everything they own in real estate. And from there, I built a property management company to sustain my properties. And we turned that into a very sustainable business. We scaled it to about 1,000 properties in 3 different cities in Texas. Ended up selling that business last year to a larger company. And now I get to, speak and educate. And I've been all over the world. I've spoken around Australia on tour. I've spoken around the United States, educating investors and property managers on running a business and understanding the mistakes that I made so that they don't make them.
Yep. And I love, I know you often talk about kind of the goals and strategies and tactics and that whole kind of mindset shift that you had to make. Can you tell me more about that? Because I think that would be great for our audience. And I think it's, like you said, a lot of the people listening, they might even have, paralysis analysis and, they're kind of waiting for perfect timing. So for those types of people, can you really talk about, your mindset shift there?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I did early on when we started our management company is we made it a point to be coached and mentored, because we knew that we knew what we didn't know. And we were coming off some major losses of owning property. So we knew we had to get guidance. And, one of our mentors taught us this acronym or this term called B times do equals have. And I get a lot of people that ask me, Steve, what's the one thing that I can do to be successful? Is it driving around? Is it knocking on doors? Is it making the phone call? And they'll say, what do I do? One thing. And so my answer back to them is do you really think it's one thing? Like, is there some magic bean that I eat every morning, or a handshake, or something I do that has driven my success? And the answer is obviously no. It's consecutive things that I do on a daily basis. Now, being a pilot, one of the things that we've learned in aviation is whenever there's an aircraft accident or an incident, the NTSB will go in and they will retrace those steps of the accident. And statistically, they will retrace those steps to 7 errors, human errors, that actually cause an aircraft disaster. So my answer back to people is, if it's 7 things for a disaster, couldn't it be 7 things for success? I mean, if you do 7 things. Now, the difference of this is it's not the 7 things you do, it's the 7 things of the person that you become to do those. So most people think of the do part. They want to do, right? As entrepreneurs, we want to get out there and work. We want to buy a deal. We want to flip something. It's not the do that makes you successful. It's who you have to become and how you have to think differently. And so the reason I say this is because I was not that person. I was the doer. I just thought, if I work hard, I will be successful. But the reality is there is no tie-in between hard work and success. We like to think it makes us feel good, right? We think like, well, I'm busting my ass today. I'm going to do great. I'm going to be successful. But we all of us know people who work hard their whole lives and they don't have success to show for it. And it's because maybe they're working hard in the wrong direction. And again, I was one of these people. And what I realized after I had all my failures, which I learned as much as I could from them. Of course, I didn't think of it as the time as a lesson, but they were. And what I realized was the reason I was making so many mistakes is I didn't have an end destination or an end goal. I was buying deals to buy deals. If you ask the seller if this is a good deal, chances are they're going to tell you, yeah, it's a great deal. You should buy it. And I'm like, hey, I'm smart. You're smart. Let's do the deal. And so I have to be the one, the great thing about real estate is there's no rules, right? You can flip wholesale. You can do notes. You can structure a deal however you want. The bad thing about real estate is there's no rules. You can do whatever you want and there is no one to stop you or guide you except your own guidelines. And so the biggest mistake that most people make is they do stuff first before they think about where they're actually going. So it's like getting on the freeway and just driving your car and you have no idea where your destination is. And then you stop and ask someone advice like, hey, Steve, should I buy this deal? And I'm going to go, where are you going with this? And if you say, I don't know, I can't help you and give you directions. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, we think I'll just get a deal to get a deal and I'll figure it out as I go. But you could actually be going the wrong way. And I did that. And that's why I know. So I became very, very adamant about helping and teaching people that you've got to have an end goal. That's kind of your end destination, your North Star, the reason that you do it, it's your why. Mm-hmm. The strategy is how you get there. So if, let's say, for example, Disneyland is your end destination in life. And I ask people, why are you doing this? Like, what do you want your life to look like? It's not the money. It's not the amount of revenue per month. It's what that revenue is going to give you. So it's the perception of the safety and security of the revenue or the assets or whatever, generational wealth, whatever you're trying to do.
Right.
And from there, now that's the destination. The strategy is the freeway. So are you going to flip to get there? Are you going to buy and hold? Are you going to note? Are you going to wholesale? Whatever you're going to do. These are all different freeways and they can get you to the destination, some faster than others. Some you've got to get on one freeway, get off another and keep going. And the last thing is the tactic. The tactic is the vehicle, meaning what is the asset that you're going to do? Is it a single family home, multifamily home? So the easy way that I explain it is if you're going to go to Disneyland, what freeways are you going to take to get there? And lastly, what car are you going to drive to get yourself there? So you wouldn't take a snowmobile in Los Angeles and try to drive it on the freeways. You would know that's the wrong tactic. But many, like that way makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of us look at this and go, yeah, that's, of course I wouldn't drive a snowmobile in LA. But a lot of times we buy the wrong property, which is the tactic, and we're shocked that it didn't get us to our destination. Well, if you put it in the other terms, like, well, you're driving a snowmobile in LA, they go, oh, yeah, now it kind of makes sense. So I know that was a long answer, but that's how in depth I've gone into
Very
learning
helpful.
how to think.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because we, DealMachine wants to be a tool to help, real estate investors take action. And yeah, like taking action is gonna at least help you start to build momentum. But you're right, they need to think through the mindset as they're doing that, and why are they doing that, and what are they going to target, and understand the why behind everything as they started to execute on a tactic like that. So
yeah, and let me just say, like your DealMachine, it's a great form of leverage, and I think people need to understand it, but it can work against them if they don't understand how it's like a loaded weapon, right? You've got to be very careful what you're doing, because I always think back, like when I had properties that I could not run correctly and I was losing money on, and I ended up going to closing, and actually we had to bring money to closing, and we were the happiest people, by the way, because it was no longer our problem. The guy buying it, he was happy because he was getting a great deal. He ended up taking those properties and making a lot of money. So when I think about that, I think, okay, it was the same four walls and a roof. What was the difference? Why could I not make money with the same property, the same everything? Well, he had a different strategy. He used a different form of leverage than I was using. Not bad, not different. I mean, I was able to build a multi-million-dollar company because of my failures. So I'm not complaining. And had I never failed at the level that I did, I probably would never have built the company. But I realized that what you guys do is great, because it's a great form of leverage for people, and they just have to understand how to use that at the maximum capacity to get them to where they want to go, because it's like rocket fuel if you use it correctly.
Yep. Yeah, and one thing, speaking of that rocket fuel and putting yourself in the right direction, you've talked about kind of triggers and how to think through creating great triggers to create a routine of taking action. Can you kind of talk about how people should think about forming habits and controlling their triggers to do that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm a huge, as you can tell, I'm a huge student and believer in the mind and how it works and how powerful it is. And, we have triggers every day that go on inside of our mind, or physical things that we do, and we don't realize it. For example, let's say you want to go to the gym, right? I'm not a big believer in home gyms. I go to the gym. I've got triggers. Like I get out my pre-energy drink, I put my gym clothes on, I get in the car. So these are all triggers that are making me committed to going to the gym. Now, once I get to the gym, it would be, in my mind, inconceivable to walk up to the front door, turn around and go, I'm not going today, I'm going to go home, right? Because I've done all these triggers. Nothing physically has changed about me. I've just changed my mental state. So when things happen to us during the day, whether we're focused, or maybe we're unfocused, or we're pissed, or we're trying to analyze a deal, or we just want to spend time with the family and relax, there are triggers that we all have that happen to us that cause us to get into the mindset of like, okay, this is focused deal time. Okay, this is family time. And what I've learned is that if we can create triggers or control our own triggers, we can take ourselves to exponential wealth and growth and happiness, whether it's financial or just personal happiness, because we can control our state. And so a lot of that starts with the words we use, right? People that I coach and mentor, as I'm talking to them, I just have a piece of paper and I just tick mark every time I hear them say the word try, can't, and but, those three words. Because those are all excuses, right? Those are excuse triggers for them. And so by the time they're done, I hold up the paper and I'm like, do you know what this is? I'm like, what? I'm like, these are your bullshit excuses that you've been trying to justify why it's okay for you to fail. Like, and I crumble it up and I throw it away. And I'm like, look, I don't care. I don't care if you want to do this or not. It's not going to affect my life. I want to help you, but you have to help yourself. And these triggers that you're telling yourself it's okay to fail, the only person you're hurting is me. It doesn't affect me at all. And so they realize like, oh, wow. So I tell them, I say, for the next week, every time you say that word, I want you to write it down and I want you to replace it with another word. And they do. And just that alone, because, 70% of what we think is negative. That's just the human brain. So for you to think negative is actually in line with your human brain. That's why everyone likes watching the news, because you go, well, at least my life is not as screwed up as that person. Look at me, I'm doing okay. And so what happens is when you're trying to go against that and you're trying to think positively by affirmations or setting your day and setting your schedule every single day, there's small course corrections in your life, but it makes a huge difference. And believe it or not, it's just the words we use that actually start that whole process. So if you change your words, you change your actions. You change your actions, you're going to change your outcome, which will eventually, compound out, and it'll change your life.
Yep. Yeah, this is fantastic. Great. Well, if you have, say you do change that shift in mindset, you are having, positive affirmations like that and putting yourself in the right direction. When you start to take action and you understand your why and all of that, from a business partner perspective, that's an area that I think you've talked about the importance of having one and what to look for in one and all of that. To even get to that stage, how do you think about getting buy-in from, if you have whoever you get buy-in from, a family, a spouse, anyone like that? How do you kind of think through doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I talk to a lot of people that are newer and they want to partner, like, oh, me and this other person don't know what we're doing, so we're going to partner. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, so two losers are going to get together and do you think you're going to win? Like, how does that make sense, right? It just, logically, it doesn't. Like, if you were playing a sports team, would you pick the worst person on your team and be like, hey, I suck at this, you suck at this, maybe we can win? It doesn't make sense. But in business, ego and money and pride gets in the way of logical thinking. So we don't want to look stupid on ourselves. So we bring someone else in. So we go, well, at least we can split looking stupid 50-50, right? That's not the way a partnership should be. A partnership needs to be, what am I bringing to the table? What value do I have? And what does this person have? And more importantly, do we complement each other? Meaning, is my strength that person's weakness and vice versa? And so a lot of people don't think about that. They think, oh, well, I'm still new, I can't ask that question. Well, that's just the story you tell yourself. That's not reality, right? The reality is you can ask whatever you want. It's simple. You ask, right? You ask, what are you bringing to the table? What am I bringing? If I'm bringing sweat equity to the table, that may be great on deal number 1 or deal number 4. But what happens on deal number 25, 3 years down the road, and you're going, hey, man, I'm tired of busting my ass. Why don't you get out there and do it? And they're going, hey, that wasn't our deal. Our deal was I provide the money. We're 50-50. And see, that's where the rub starts is, it's, right now is the honeymoon phase where things are great, but they don't think of down the road. And so what I suggest to people that are going to partner is, number 1, find out what the equal opposite is of the other person. More importantly, you have to talk about the divorce, right? The divorce is what happens if this doesn't work out. Now, many people I talk to, they go, oh, I grew up with this guy, or that's my cousin or my brother-in-law. We're tight. I'm like, that is exactly why you have to have this discussion. They say contracts save relationships. So if you can't have a business conversation with someone to be like, hey, listen, we need to protect yourselves. I want you to protect yourself. I want to protect myself. This is a business. Let's have this discussion. If they cannot have that logical business discussion when things are good, how do you think it's going to go when things are bad and all the shit's hitting the fan and you need $50,000 and they don't have it? And they're going, I didn't know that this was going to happen. So again, you've got to talk about the divorce, how you divide assets, what happens if you have to dissolve the company, who gets what. Now, one thing I've realized is a lot of us, we never talk about the bad. We always talk about the good, right? This is going to be great. We're going to make a ton of money, blah, blah, blah. The reality is there's good that we're selling people on because we basically present on emotions, we buy on emotions, and then we back it up with logic, right? So normally it's the emotions that do the purchasing. And we're trying to sell someone. Maybe it's our spouse. We're trying to sell our significant other on this great new idea of getting in real estate. And we're only telling pie in the sky scenario. This is going to be awesome. We're going to be able to retire. And the spouse, maybe in the back of their mind, they're going, man, this sounds too good to be true. I'm not sure, right? But they're not involved in it. You are involved in it. And so you're trying to get their buy-in. So you're giving them this pie in the sky scenario. Well, we all know that there's here and then there's worst case, and you're probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So my suggestion is you have to present the facts, right? Here's the facts. If we're going to flip a property, it's going to take 43 hours of work. Best case, worst case, 120 hours of work. I think initially we may be towards 120 mark, but I think I can get it down to the 50 level mark by so many deals, right? Now you've given them best case, worst case, and where you think you'll be. So now they can take that information. Now, a lot of times a spouse or significant other, they will base their decision on fear and emotion of a past experience or something they were told, not reality. So they'll say, oh, you're going to lose your money, or the 2 a.m. toilet call. Well, I've owned properties for 20 years. I've never been called at 2 a.m., but that's their fear, and that's reality for them. So you have to address that. You can't just say it's not going to happen. You almost have to say, okay, why? What is causing you to think that? Because as soon as you get emotion because you think that they're, slamming your idea, now you get emotional. All logic is off the table once you get emotional. So you have to be logical and understand where are you coming from. You've got to respect that concern.
Yeah, validate their opinion. Yeah.
Validate it. You've got to address it. And then you have to work through possible solutions. Okay, well, what if we did this? Would you feel better if we had this trigger in place? So again, this is with partnerships. This is so, so important because I know many people where partnerships go bad. And when they go bad, it is not pretty, right? Because you start off friends, you lose friendships, you lose family members, spouse is pissed at you, and the other thing I would say is when you do have a partner, you definitely want to have like board of directors meetings with them, maybe once per quarter. And when you do the board of directors meetings, that's when you want to bring in the spouse or significant other of each party to be at the meeting. That way, it's kind of the airing of dirty laundry. Let's get everything on the table. Is there any concerns? This is where we're going. Are we on track or off track? Here's how much money, P&L statement. You're running it like a board of directors meeting, presenting the facts. And then it's like, is there any concerns? And this is where everyone gets it on the table. You don't want to be like, oh, my wife, she's got a problem, this or that. It's like, no. Let's bring it up at the board of directors meeting, or let's have an emergency meeting if it's something pressing. But if not, it waits to the board of directors meeting. And that's why you're handling the business as a business proactively, not just reacting every time somebody, gets a wild hair and they want to have a conversation about something that's just an emotional knee jerk.
Yeah. So if I know you touched on at one point, you said, hey, if you have two people who haven't really done this before going together, not necessarily a recipe for success. Do you have any tips on how a new real estate investor could find that first business partner and really, find someone that doesn't have their strengths and try to complement each other like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of ways. The first thing is you have to figure out what are your strengths and what are you good at. So that's number one. And, I'm a big believer in, there's a thing called DISC profiling. It's a personality profiling. And everybody is a portion of some variation of DISC, D, I, S, and C. And so you want to go to what is your strength. So for me, I'm a very high I, which means I'm pretty good at talking and communicating. And I am more of a salesperson. I'm not the accountant. I'm not the one who's going to be stuck in an office all day. I'm the one who wants to be out on camera, speaking on stages, all that stuff. My business partner, he was a DC, meaning he gave directions and he was an operations guy. So it wouldn't make sense for both of us if we both were I profiles in the I, which is influential. If both of us were I's, we would never have anybody running the operation. If both of us were C's, nobody would be selling. So you have to have that complement, and the DISC profiling system is a good way to get the conversation started because we didn't know it at the time. We didn't plan it. He and I have been partners for over 15 years on multiple businesses, and we just work well together because he's the operator and I'm like the visionary who's out in front, and we don't step on each other's toes. So it's very important to understand who's doing what and what skill sets you have in the business model.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the people listening to it, they do fall in that range of, could be evaluating a business partner, trying to find one, need to rethink the skill, your mindset. So that's great. For the people who are more focused on scaling and maybe they've done a couple of deals and they have a team or they're, starting to build out a team, I'd love to talk a little bit more around, those people who are already taking action like that and how they should think about operations. Is there anywhere right away that you think like, hey, here's where investors get that wrong, get, the idea of how to build a team, how to outsource, how to, come up with all this structure more effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing people have a hard time understanding is that they don't have a business. The majority of people out there have a job. And the definition of a business, as I was taught, is a commercial profitable enterprise that runs without you and has a sale date. So if you break that sentence down, there's a lot of meaning in there. The first meaning is a commercial profitable enterprise. Well, nobody should ever be in the business to lose money, right? You may be losing money at the time or whatever, but that's not the goal. So until you have a business that's profitable, number one, you don't have a business just out of the gate. A commercial profitable enterprise that runs without me. Running without you means, could you step out of the business? Like if you got hit by a car tomorrow, could I step in your business and look at all the systems, policies, and procedures and do your job? If the answer is no, and it requires your ability, then again, you don't have a business, you have a job. So you have to learn how to start scaling yourself out and removing yourself so that you are not the bottleneck or the linchpin or the one, sometimes you are the one that's actually restricting all the growth because you have the heroitis that says, nobody can do it as good as me. I built this. This is my baby. Just get out of the way. I'm going to do this. Well, all you're doing is you're basically buying yourself a job. And many people do this for self-sabotage reasons because they want to feel needed, because they don't want to leave what they built. And they don't think that anyone can do it better than themselves. And they're so busy being busy, they never stop to work on the business. They're always working in the business. Now, the last part of that statement is has a sale date. Now, you may say, I don't want to sell my business. And that's not the reason. The reason of having a sale date is it's like a goal and a dream, right? A dream is a great idea. It becomes a goal when you actually write it on paper. The reason you want to have a sale date is you want to turn that dream into a goal of having that business model running without you, because it needs to be a saleable asset, meaning it's running without you so that you could sell it. Doesn't mean you have to, but it means it doesn't require any of your involvement, meaning you don't go with the business. That's how you know that you could step out and it runs without you. So when we had our property management company, we had about 60% of our company was outsourced to virtual assistants. We got so good at this. We actually started a virtual assistant company in Mexico because we got so good at it, because we learned that you'd be amazed at what you can outsource and systematize with the right people. But it starts, the fish stinks from the head down. It starts with leadership, and it starts with you creating processes, procedures, and structure of everything that's being done in your business. And for people that are starting out, if they're saying, how do you even begin this? What I always have people do whenever I've helped them is I tell them the first thing you do is for the first 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I want you to, from the time you wake up to the time that you go to bed, I want you to write down every minute of your day. And at the end of that day, I want you to total up those minutes. And I want you to tell me, how much time are you on the phone? How much are you on social media? How much are you answering emails? How much are you driving around, right? How much is productive? You do that. And then after you do that, so you do your time, then you do the totalizers. And after that, you do an executive summary where you actually have to write down where your challenges are. I guarantee you after 2 weeks, it will be blatantly clear where you are spending your time and where you should and should not be spending your time. The things that you should not be doing, those may be low level, low enjoyment tasks that you look to outsource, automate, or systematize. So it's either outsource, automate it, or systematize it. One of those three. And you'd be amazed at how much of your life can become automated and systematized or outsourced by just looking at it from working on the business and looking at it objectively. In 2 weeks, you'd be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, I actually, I was going to ask, because I think a lot of people on here, they are thinking about using a virtual assistant and maybe never have, and wanted your advice on how to go through that process. Because I did that back in the probably January, February timeframe, and I was shocked, like you said, really identifying here's where I'm spending my time. I didn't, you don't know until you measure it and really see it in front of you. And then it does become obvious of, oh, wow, actually, I think I could get help with this and this and this. And then, me bringing on a virtual assistant has been extremely valuable. So I'd highly recommend it for people out there if they're even thinking about it, just trying to go through that exercise and maybe see if it's even possible for yourself. But
yeah, and the biggest thing, the biggest mistake I see people doing, so if you're looking at thinking of getting a virtual assistant, what I always recommend is you do one task at a time and you let them master that task. So you don't, it's like wood, right? You don't throw all the wood on the fire because it'll smother the fire, right? So a lot of people, they want to lead by abdicating, meaning they just want to go, here, take all this shit and I don't want to see it anymore, just take care of it. But you haven't given them the leadership or the training to be successful. You just said, do it. And then when they don't do it right, what happens? You go, oh, you know what? VAs don't work. Give it back to me. I'll take care of it. Well, it's actually the lack of leadership and training the reason they're not succeeding, right? But the thing is, the rule of thumb is if they can do it 80% as good as you, they're really probably doing 120% better than you, because that's the only thing they're doing. So there's, again, they say that a 5-minute phone call is equal to 23 minutes of interrupted time. So, somebody calls, you've got to stop what you're doing. You've got to take the phone call. You've got to deal with the situation. You've got to, reassess it. Then you got to re-engage in what you're doing. So look, in this business, right, you're flipping properties, you're driving, you're doing this. If you get 10 phone calls a day, which is not unheard of, that's 230 minutes. That's almost half of your day is gone being reactionary and not getting to what you need to do. So the question is, if someone else can take those calls or you can offload those 230 minutes, what effectiveness and opportunity cost could you now be doing to be effective to grow your business and let someone else do it? It's not that it doesn't have to be done. A lot of these things have to be done. They just do not have to be done by you. And so that's our ego stepping in, that we think we can do things the best. And that's not reality. That's just what we tell ourselves to feel important.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. Great. Well, Steve, I have one more question too. I know you talked about a little bit about using leverage the right way and how to think about leverage the proper way. Could you maybe touch on where you see most mistakes being made in that realm with, especially investors in that kind of 0 to 10, unit range?
Yeah, I mean, I think it culminates into a lot of the things that we discussed earlier. Leverage is a great tool, but it's a pendulum and it swings both ways. And if you don't use it correctly, it will come back at crushing speed, and it will crush you, and it'll just clean the clock of anything in its way. And a lot of people don't understand leverage. They think that they see what these other people are doing on social media and this other things, and they think that's what they want. But the biggest reason people fail is they don't know what they want first. So maybe it's over leveraging a property, over leveraging team, over leveraging money, all these things that they do because they think that's what they should be doing. But again, it's like building a house, right? You don't start putting stuff on the house until you have the foundation built, set, and then you start building on top of it. And I think that's where a lot of people make the mistakes is they don't have the foundation. They just start stacking shit on top of stuff. And all of a sudden they're like, I can't believe that crumbled. Like, that's odd. Like, real estate must not work. It's like, no, it works. We all know successful people. The problem, I think, today with social media is we see so many people doing so many different things. We think all these people are doing different things, but the reality is the successful people are very vertical. They do one thing. So for example, myself, when we managed properties, we managed 1,000 properties. They were single family rental properties. We didn't do Airbnb. We didn't do multifamily. We didn't do vacations. We did single family homes. And when people would ask us, why don't you do other things? Our answer is we make cheese pizzas. We make the best cheese pizza because we know exactly what we're doing, and that's our vertical. And so I think a lot of people, when it comes to leverage, is number one, they don't understand where they're going, but more importantly, they don't understand that as you grow, your role is now to become the leader. And that leadership has to work on the business, not in the business. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is they don't understand that they become that leader. And if they can't, they need to hire that leader, because leaders aren't born. They are bred and created by doing things like this, watching podcast shows, educating yourself. That's how leaders are created. And so anyone can be a leader, but you have to put intention and focus on it. You're not just going to walk out one day and run the 4-minute mile, right? It's not going to happen. You have to train. You have to become that person. And so I think all of this culminates that people jump into the game and they don't know what they're doing, and they go in the wrong direction with the wrong people. They're surrounded by the wrong headset. All of that culminates into a basically failure. And so I don't know if that answers the question about leverage, but that's kind of, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of this wraps up in that mindset and understanding your why and why you're even taking action in the first place. Because if you don't know that, then you're going to get distracted by, like you said, by everything else you see and all these different tactics without understanding the foundation behind it, or why you're even, why you should even take that, go down that road with the tactic. So
yeah, absolutely.
Great. Perfect. Well, is there any other, advice you think we missed over there, or if not, love to hear how people can get in touch with you and learn more from you and follow you there, and
Yeah, I think the only thing I would tell people watching is, the one thing you have to think about and you have to remember is that the reason that I did this, right now we're going through this whole pandemic, right? And a lot of people are coming back to me because the airlines are furloughing pilots and all this stuff is happening. And so people come back to me and they say, hey, Steve, is this how it was for you back 20 years ago? And what's different? And I say, yes, this is very similar, except this was a one-day tragedy. This has kind of been killing us with a spoon, delay tactic. But my answer is the difference between 2001 and today is 20 years of action. That's it. That's all I've done is I've taken constant focus and action. And a lot of it was wrong. Probably 80% of what I did was wrong. But I only need to be right one time. I only needed to sell my business once. So a lot of people are afraid to even get started. They're afraid to even cross the starting line for fear of looking dumb, for, someday. Someday's the busiest day on the calendar because it never comes. But that's where we put our dreams and our ideas. And so my advice to anybody watching is just take action, right? It's okay if it's wrong, but just identify it. Don't let it identify you and keep going. I mean, the one thing that I remember asking one of my mentors, which is a very, very successful business person, I said, if you were me back when you first started this entrepreneur journey, what advice would you give yourself? And without even missing a beat, he said, I would fail as fast as I could. I would learn that lesson. He said, and everything I did from that point on, he goes, I would fail. I would look for the failures like a gold miner looking for nuggets. And he said, you've got to find that. He goes, if you can do that and you can look at your failures that way, you will fail fast, you'll fail often. And he goes, you will become wealthier than you've ever imagined because you're seeing something that no one else is seeing. And so that's my advice. I mean, it sounds weird, but the more action you take, the more you're going to fail. And that's actually a good thing. And so I think for people doing that, I think that is the key to success. I mean, that's again, I didn't plan it that way. It just happened for me. But, every time we failed, man, we got right back up and you get hit in the face, you get back up. I mean, look, bad things happen to good people, right? Tenants trash properties, contractors steal from you. At the end of the day, these are lessons that you can go, you know what? I know what not to do now. Maybe I need a better screening process for my tenants. Maybe I need better contractors. Maybe this is me. So again, you've got to look back at yourself and don't be the victim, be the victor. And really, sometimes it's a mirror on you to go, okay, I'm taking action. Yeah, I'm failing, but you know what? I'm not going to make that mistake again. And so that's my solution. For those of you that want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram on Rozenberg Steve. It's Rozenberg Steve. Facebook, Steve Rozenberg. I'm pretty much everywhere. If you Google me, I do BiggerPockets. You and I are doing something on BiggerPockets together. So yeah, I'm kind of everywhere. If you find me, you'll see I'm out there quite a bit.
Yeah, I love it, Steve. And I'm I'm inspired and fired up from this conversation too. So I'm ready to take action myself. But
Cool.
thanks again for having for coming on here. Our Thought Leader Spotlight Series piece, and everybody out there, make sure to follow Steve. He at the very least, you're going to get fired up from his stuff and be able to take be inspired to think the right way and take your own action as well. So thanks again for being on.
No problem. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.